right. Well, welcome back to the Stroll Through the Library podcast. We have got a super fun guest on today, somebody that I'm excited to be chatting with because this guy might be the busiest human being I've ever met, I think, at least from what I see online, what I can keep up with. So this is Gavin Linderman. He is the lead pastor of Axiom Church, which is one of our Mennonite brethren churches. We're in the same denomination. He also owns Easy Tiger Bar. He owns the Project Banquet, which I think runs a ton of things, if I'm right. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I know there's the Monastery Art Studio, there's Driftwood Coffee, a bunch of stuff under that umbrella as well. And then he's also, maybe most importantly, if I'm correct, the bassist of a rock band. So that's pretty awesome. Love to talk about that a little bit. He's also one of the directors at Surge Network Arizona, a whole bunch of other stuff. He's always doing something. So welcome. Thank you for popping on here, Gavin. I appreciate it, man.
Dude, thanks, man. I appreciate it too. Yeah, everybody calls me busy.
Yeah.
And it's, I'm just going to dive into the books now because Eugene Peterson, as you know, the unbusy pastor. And that is like the icon for the kind of pastor I want to be, is actually not busy. But everybody thinks I'm busy, which is kind of the trick, right? Like, if you're really good at this job, if you're really good at this, you can be, you can create culture, and in that create a number of spaces, but you don't have to fill every space. Presence is required,
Yep.
but you don't have to be the guy in every one of them, So
Absolutely.
I have a lot of things I'm passionate about, and certainly have said yes to many of those things, but I'm not that busy, believe it or not. So
hey, that's a good thing. I gotta learn more of that one, I think, but but that's a good thing for sure. I feel that it's kind of nice to just find things that you're passionate about and work through that. I think especially when it's like your job or multiple jobs, it makes it a whole lot easier. And on top of that, yeah, not having to be the person to run it is one of those. I think it's always the pressure of a pastor is I always have to deal with that. Like, I don't have to be the person leading this thing. I just kind of got to set it up and put the right people in place, and culture is a huge piece of that.
Yeah, and if we're just practitioners of what we preach, then that means that we're going to be in a lot of spaces. If our church is like kind and has a good ecclesiology, they'll probably let us be involved in that. It's like as you're writing books, that you're not taking off the pastor hat entirely when you do that.
No, definitely not.
It's all part of your stewarding of the corner of the sandbox that God's given you. And so that's how I look at it. I wear the same hat in every one of those spaces. And so yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. No, I see all this stuff that you post on Instagram, and I'm like, man, I want to get involved in all these things that look awesome. So if you're in or near Peoria, Arizona, go check them out. Go check out all the stuff. I promise it looks like fun from out here. So one of these days I'll get out there. But yeah, it is pretty cool.
Give me a date. Just give me a date, man. We'll fly you out. It'd be awesome.
Dude, I'm down. We'll talk about it afterwards. But but yeah, so a couple of the questions, like I said, while we were off air, my whole heart for this show, as it's kind of in its early stages, especially, has just been when I'm listening to someone talk, preaching or podcasting or whatever else, even if I'm reading a book, I'm always interested in what are the works that have formed that person. And I've often been surprised by the answers in a good way. Like we had Josh Porter on last week, which I shared with you, and his answers to the questions were so fun, because often you ask a pastor, like, hey, what books have shaped you? And they're going to list off all of these theological works. And Josh's answers were very fiction, which was very cool. It was kind of a different window. Mine are usually a little different than either of those, somewhere in between the two, because I tend to like both. But I'm interested to get into that with you. So the first question I've got is, when you think back to your earliest memories of reading, probably the first part of that is like, did you like reading as a kid in general? I know a lot of people didn't, but what's a book that really stuck with you from your childhood, kind of something that you came back to?
Yeah. Well, what comes up right away first is it's kind of an experience in grade school when I was struggling to read, specifically in comprehension.
Well, yeah.
And the irony was, like, I didn't even know what comprehension meant, right?
Sure.
And so I was like, Wait, I'm struggling in what? I don't know what that means. And they're like, well, it means you don't know what things mean. And I'm
Yep.
like, oh, and like we remember the things that kind of hurt, right, or stung a
Oh
little
yeah.
bit, and so I've always like had a weird relationship with reading ever since, to be honest.
Yeah.
And so that being said, yeah, there's some books that stand out, and we have to give credit to the school systems we're a part of because they make you read some. But there was a book called Hatchet, which
Oh yeah.
most young dudes and millennials are aware of, and that book was I bought it, read it, and then got all the sequels and read it all over the course of the summer, and it sort of instilled a little bit of the pioneering spirit in me. I
Yeah.
think that has to this day been sort of something I come back to. And I'm not even a big woodsman, you'd think I'd be like, but Hatchet, you've heard of it, that one?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
Does every pastor say that book? Because that would be really funny.
No, so far I have gotten, I think Jurassic Park has been the biggest one that I've heard the most thus far. But Hatchet is one that I really enjoyed. So and it's one of those like required reading in school. And I honestly hated required reading so very much. Because I don't know, there's an element of you told me to read this, I don't really want to do it. If I found it on my own, maybe I'd enjoy it. But that was one that I do remember really sticking out to me as well. Just kind of a fun book, even if it's even if it may not be viewed that way by everyone. I enjoyed it, so I get that one for sure. And
Yeah, that.
yeah, yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. That one, and I can't remember the name, but the book sticks with me. It's Frank Peretti book.
Oh, yep,
Which again was like the Christian adventure, killing demons, that kind of thing.
yep.
And for kids, it's just kind of hilarious. Like how many of us got such bad theology and trauma out of
Oh
some of
man,
that? But
I
those were
remember. I remember Frank Peretti. I had not grown up with Peretti. That wasn't a thing that my parents had brought in for whatever reason. Probably because we were a pretty reformed household and that just wasn't that vein of theology wasn't as big. But my wife, when we started dating, she was like, oh my goodness, I can't remember the title of the movie either, but it was a Frank Peretti movie made from one of his books. She was like, how have you never seen this? She was like, you like horror movies. I sat down and watched that and I was like, that was totally different. That was not what I expected whatsoever. Not entirely sure how I feel about it theologically, but like, cool, man. I guess there's something for
yeah,
Pentecostal Christian kids, maybe, but I don't know.
yeah, classic, man. Yeah, those ones rise to the surface for me. So I do like reading, and I did like it as a kid, but I was a little
Yeah.
gun shy. I was looking for the easy reads early
Yep.
on, so I don't know at
No,
what
I
point
get
I
that.
fell in love with reading. Yeah.
I recall, like, for me, I guess it was high school. I started reading The Scarlet Letter,
Hmm.
which in retrospect, classic book, probably great. I will be completely honest, I have not picked it back up for this exact reason. But I remember reading through it and I was like, oh my gosh, I have read 6 pages of this book and I comprehended maybe one phrase. Like I know the story because I've heard all of the cultural zeitgeist, what this book is about. But I have no idea how you get that out of this book because man, it's written in like King James times 10 English. I don't know what's going on with this, but but yeah, I struggled through reading a lot in middle and high school. And finally, I think college age was about the time that I actually enjoyed it for the first time. But when it comes to just books that we read in our childhood, one of the things that we've talked about a lot on the show has just been the reality that a lot of us kind of, whether it's escapism, I don't think is always the case. Like I had a pretty good childhood overall, but I really did enjoy like reading. The few books that I enjoyed was just kind of a respite from whatever else was going on. So one of the questions I like to ask is like, what was going on in your life at that point in time as you encounter that? Where'd you grow up? What was that like?
Yeah, I was a Midwest kid, and the woods were like my backyard, and so
Yeah.
I was always just in the woods as a kid, doing all the fun things you can imagine a young guy might, young kid is. Um, and I think books sort of helped make reality more interesting because it gave us an imagination to play. And if we're just left with our purely empirical senses, that's no fun, right? And
Yep.
so as a kid, it was easy to, and in some ways it still is, but yeah, I think the books gave me a chance to dr- uh, be better outside of the book, right? And
Yeah,
so that's why I think books like Hatchet and stuff were great for stuff. Keep me
absolutely.
out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of those pieces where I had one guest on, and she was talking about kind of it being like a safe place for her to read books. Like it was kind of with all the chaos of childhood, it was a good thing for her. And I was like, honestly, for me, I had nothing to relate to the books that I read. Like it really wasn't that, but it was kind of like taking a mental vacation. Even if the story was stressful, it was a different place creatively. I was thinking through things that I hadn't had to process in my life yet. And I enjoy that it was kind of a safe place to process things at a young age that I think is a huge benefit. My kids now, man, my oldest is 8, and that kid reads. He's been trying to beat me this year, and I think he's on track to like double the amount of books I've read this year. But we had to get him a Goodreads page so he can track all of them and everything. But he just eats up books, and I'm like, yeah, I did too. At that age, it wasn't until middle and high school that I really started to hate books, and then came back eventually. But yeah, I think it's a good place to kind of parse those ideas out in some way that is a safe place to do that for a lot of people.
There's we were doing something as a family at the table, and my wife had asked the kids to all write down a word to describe their
Oh yeah.
dad.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I can't wait to see what they put. Well, all three of them on their own put the same word, which was like, whoa. And it was a word that kind of surprised me, but the word was brave, which was
Oh,
like,
that's
that's kind
cool.
of a good word to get from your kids.
Amen.
But yeah, but it was like, I think again, like if you've read Hatchet, I think books like that I read early on gave me not just a curiosity, but a confidence it taught me how to step into stuff, and
Yeah,
how to not be afraid of scenarios. And so it was play, but yeah, I mean it's mental mapping, I mean the books are more, they're not existential. It's existential
yep,
realities getting into our very real reality. And
absolutely.
and so I think it's a download. And so but which is why I'm even like, honestly, we'll probably end up talking about this, but I'm actually cautious about reading books as much as I am eager to, so
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And why? I mean, we can jump into that, but what's kind of your thoughts behind that? Like, why is? I mean, I get it, but but what's your
yeah.
thoughts behind
Well,
that?
I can expand on it a little bit. My rule of life is relationships, so I'll start there, which means I don't do anything with people that I don't know. And so like I did this podcast because I know you, but I've been asked to do a ton, and
Yep,
I just say no to most of them. I don't go preach at churches that I don't know who they are. I don't like reading books if I haven't met the author.
yep,
Or the caveat is I'll read a book if I read it with someone else,
yeah,
because I
yep,
don't trust this sort of disembodied thing to just live in my head and germinate without the community hermeneutic at play. And so
absolutely.
for me, that's just kind of become, that's why college was like kind of when I really started reading, because it was like, okay, I got to read these together in the class with other people. And then the church has been a great place for that as well. So rarely have I read a book like by myself. There are a few that I've tried it into, but sincerely some caution, which maybe just means like I'm an unhealthy person. I don't know. Uh,
No, no.
because
I
yeah. What are you thinking?
I think it's a good thing. I know for me, like I don't know if we've talked about it a whole lot before, but for me, I had kind of grown up in a very conservative Christian culture. I was homeschooled, and so it was very my parents did a good job of trying to make sure we weren't super sheltered from everything. But a lot of the people that I was around, like I recall I think maybe 15, 16 years old, one of my friends had gone to the dollar store and bought like a little pocket radio situation, and he was hiding it from his parents because he could listen to Beyonce on the radio. And like that was something he had to hide in our culture, not in my family, but in many of the people I was around. That was kind of the
Or
culture.
Beyonce?
No, no Beyonce in that house. Nope. And in reality, I mean, there's good and bad. I've got lots of thoughts on that, but that's a whole different thing. But at the end of the day, like I know for me that I graduated. I was working at a church as a youth pastor, and for me, I started listening to actually the Bad Christian podcast was probably the first thing that started me down that path. And started listening to every author that they had on, reading the books, and without community, because I felt very alone in my own place, and without community I got to a place where I was like, hey, I have these problems with the way that the church is operated, and I do still hold that many of those were valid. But then these guys who are offering the fix to those problems are often just as hate filled and angry and everything else as what I was used to on the other side. But I didn't have a community to process that with. And it wasn't until later when I could talk with other people who knew what I was talking about and was like, oh, yeah, I read the same book. I've thought through that. That I was like, oh, wait a minute. There's a middle ground that I think, though it's not really a middle ground, it is a third way of just following Jesus and not trying to follow culture on this side or that side, not progressive or conservative or whatever else. It's just, what did Jesus say? And that often gets me in trouble still with people because maybe I don't fit whatever boxes they're anticipating, but that's okay with me. I'm all right with that. But it's only because of community that I could get there. Apart from that, I think I'd just go in my own head far too long. So I think it's not an unhealthy thing, I guess I would say. I think it's probably a healthier way of reading and
No, you're
processing in
right.
general.
And guys like us tend to be pretty fast at putting down some of this stuff. And
Yep.
if we don't have places to like to tease it out and work it out, we end up pretty frustrated
Yep.
and isolated. So it actually can harm us.
Absolutely.
And so even like, they do these speed reading challenges and like how many books can you do in a year? And I'm like, man, like talk about planting seeds on rocky soil,
Yep.
like where it just gets snatched up because you're digesting so much, it's gluttonous, versus like slowing down a chapter a week with your community group
Yep.
and processing and then practicing so that it's better soil.
Yeah.
So Bad Christian and a lot of the guys and women that they had on there, I think those voices were all actually really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
fine.
absolutely.
They're all somebody's heretic, but who
Yep.
cares? Like,
Yep.
um, we need a bigger orthodoxy, I think, or a more generous one at least. And I think guys like that were helpful for a lot of folks to kind of like get outside of the sort of catechism that they'd been um, taken in. So, which that's a gift and a curse, right? Like,
Yep. Yeah, I
we
wouldn't
get to
trade it.
serve.
I
Yeah.
wouldn't trade it. I think it was good. It was formationally. It kind of gets into like a lot of the newer podcasts and radio shows and stuff where people are talking about the evils of deconstruction. And I'm like, guys, sometimes if your foundation's built on the wrong thing, it needs to get knocked down. Like deconstruction's unequivocally necessary. Now the question is, what do you do once you've blown it all up? Like what what are you rebuilding on? That is
Yeah.
where I'm like, okay, now we've got concern here as the church. How do we do this? How do we aid in that building?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, well, read the book of Haggai, start there, because that's all about rebuilding. And
Amen.
I think to me, what's so, I would even take it a step further. I would say that there's a way in which the deconstruction movement is actually ascending.
Yep.
It's not just a falling apart, but God he's taking people he's tired of us just being at the church. He's getting people outside of it. And I've been amazed at how many people have left even the church I pastor on foolishness. Like they were deconstructing and they took it out on me as the, white patriarch
Yep.
pastor. And I was like, whoa, like I'm like the opposite of that. But that's fine. And then a year and a half later I bump into them and they're like, A, they're owning that, but B, they're like witnessing in places they would have never been. You take
Amen.
like a classic case like Mars Hill, it's the easy
Yep.
target. That thing toppled down, but out of it, how many communities got birthed
Hey,
with new leadership? So there's just scattering that's happening in the deconstruction also. Yeah, some of it's bad. But that's because people get like brand loyalty, right? Like they just become the deconstructionists, and then all they can do is live in a death culture, and they don't know how to, So there's a lot to be said there. But
No,
it's the
absolutely.
bad Christian was like them and Michael Gungor and a few others were like all the gateway. We want to blame them all for like robbing our youth, but in some ways God was using them, man.
Oh, definitely. No, I can only say I don't know that I would have found the encouragement that I've found through like a Eugene Peterson without having, because that wasn't part of the cultural zeitgeist that I was in,
Yeah.
without having gone to Richard Rohr and figured out those things first and kind of worked backwards from there. So no, I again, I'm grateful for it. I think it's healthy, but I do like the community element, because without that you end up just an island, and that's never a good thing in my opinion. So yeah, one of the things that I was interested in, and definitely I know we actually talked a little bit about a couple books before, but one that I was interested in hearing, is there a book that you return to over and over again? Are you like a rereader, or do you tend to read it once and put it on the shelf? Is there something that you have come back to?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few books like that. I did bring that book, or that question stood out to me. So I did bring this copy of
Yes. Yep.
The Ladder of Divine Ascent by Saint John Climacus, and I come back to that book weekly, man. It's almost a part of my like rhythm now to just be in it kind of constantly. Um, and not that like I've had to reframe a lot of his theology for it to
Sure.
be healthy and to be able to meet God's spirit in it. But at the end of the day, like the way he speaks and talks about life and God, it's like there's just it takes me somewhere I can't go on my own. And so that book, yeah, is one. And it is also probably the book that's like reshaped so much of my like worldview and relationship to like our metaphysic, like how we see reality. It's like um just it's a breathtaking book. I think he's one of the saints that probably gets overlooked, but
Yep.
and he's gritty, like very gritty. He'll tell you to go stand outside in the middle of the night and wait for the demons. But there's something true in that. It's like, okay, yeah, I
Absolutely.
do. You go take a walk alone in the woods. That's what's scaring you that you don't know that's there,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Is it just the dark? So he he teases some of that stuff out, as an example. So that's one, and I think the other one, everybody I know, I think goes back to this book. I bet you could guess the book I'm going to point to that was like the game changer book.
The game changer book for you, man. I'm
Well, for
gonna
everybody.
for yeah. I know the one we've talked about in the past, so I'm gonna go with that. I could be wrong, but I'm gonna go with contemplative pastor Eugene Peterson.
Okay.
Is that the one?
Not the one. So
Okay,
that's a
okay.
good. But the book that I hear people always point to, it could just be like guys my age too, but it's The Divine Conspiracy.
That would have
Uh,
been my second guess. So so I'm close. I'm close. I love
yeah,
that. Yep. Yep.
and I would argue with the the main thesis of that book. I would
Mhm.
actually say Dallas Willard was wrong when he talks about this idea of, you only take with you what you become. And
Yep.
this whole idea of transformation and becoming is not, to me, the main
Yep.
um, heartbeat of the kingdom. The goal of the kingdom isn't to make me more like Jesus, although that happens. The goal of the kingdom is to put me in a room with Jesus, to
Yep.
spend to have a relationship with him. And that's where I would differentiate a little bit. Regardless, theologically, his ability to succinctly speak and talk, and again, back to the metaphysic, like what is reality? Well, that's the kingdom of God. So yeah, that book's a colossal, man. That's one of the books that'll still be around. He's been, Dallas died in 2013 or whatever,
Yep.
14, and our kids uh, will be reading that book. So
No, absolutely. Yeah, and I think Dallas's contribution not only is him, but also outweighs that, even in the direction of like, I to my understanding, John Mark Comer is a contemporary of Dallas Willard, and there are some things that I push back against that Comer writes, but at the end of the day, like overall good stuff. Lots of people reading it, more than I've ever seen hardly any other Christian book get read. I talk to just about anybody and they're like, "Hey, have you read this book?" And so in fact, the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry was one that I was reading that, and it was the most convicted I think I've ever been. Somebody had told me to read it, but about speed and trying to get through things. I'm listening to that book, and I realized when I looked down that on my Audible, on my phone, I had the book playing at 2.5 times speed, listening to a book about slowing down. I think I did the same thing with Fadling's Unhurried Life, something similar to that, where I was like, oh, shoot, I am the opposite of what this book is telling me to do. And I think they're right. I think I need to slow down.
Yeah.
This is what I would preach to people, but then I'm here listening to it at 2 times speed. And so, yeah, I think the contribution to the church is vast within that, not to mention just Willard being one of my favorites as well. So I definitely get that one.
And I think what Comer did a good job with was this thing, like everybody that was preaching Dallas Willard 10 years ago, myself included, was like, how do I make this accessible to everybody? Because nobody's going to read The Divine Conspiracy.
Yep.
And what John Mark did that none of the rest of us did is he goes, yeah, I'll just rewrite it. I'll go through the major categories and rewrite it in plain language. And so I think he did, so I thank him for that. I think it's great. His book, Live No Lies, was a very good book. I didn't love, some of the other ones, but I thought that book was a great contribution and a bit, Augustinian theologically, but it was still a fantastic book on disordered desires and, spiritual warfare. He did a good job with that.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that is one that I think we just added that to our student library here. So we've got it laying around. Hopefully somebody picks it up. But yeah, I think there's some good stuff in there. One of the other things I was wondering, have you ever read a book, and it might be along a similar vein, but have you ever read a book that's just flipped your perspective on, not necessarily, I asked the question, has it flipped your perspective on God, but maybe it's more ecclesiological, the church, whatever else. What's a book that you've read that you just kind of didn't feel the same after you read it?
Yeah. I think the book that's coming to mind for me right now, and I'm going to give you the author's name first, because that might, Greg Boyd is the author, and the book that he wrote on scripture, which I'm trying to remember the name of the book, Imperfect or something like that. I'd have to look it up, but his book on scripture helped put language to something that I was like already wrestling with, but couldn't connect all the dots to. And then with that, accompanying that was his work on, cross vision, and then of course the crucifixion of the warrior God.
Amen.
So all of those, his work in general, probably him as an author more so than just one book, helped me sort of do my 180s, if you will. And Divine Conspiracy as well. I mean, honestly, as well, the gospel of the kingdom was not something that they were really teaching well in seminaries or in the church growing up. And so both of those books both of those authors were paradigm shifts for me, big time. So, yeah.
Sure.
And both those authors got me in a lot of trouble. So
Yep, they will do that. That's for sure. I know Boyd came to speak here. He was out in Heston, Kansas, so not far from where we are, 10-minute drive, whatever. And I actually didn't get to make it. We had family stuff come up, and I didn't get out there last year, and I was bummed about it. And I'm talking to another pastor in town, and he was like, "You were going to go see Boyd?" I was like, yeah, like I think he's great. I mean, there's points I disagree with, sure, but there's very seldom do I meet someone who I totally agree with, and that's okay. It's probably better that way. Like, it shapes us far better if iron sharpens iron, in my opinion. So I think that's a good thing. But no, he's written some incredible stuff for sure.
I've met so many people that like to take a crack at him, and it's really just because so many reformers like to crack at him. But very few people have like Um, actually, I mean, come on, Crucifixion of Warrior God is so thick and such a heavy work. Like,
Yep.
it's so big that of course there's going to be something that doesn't quite
Sure.
line up.
Sure.
But but by and large, that is one of the greatest modern theological works on the topic of warfare, the cross,
Yep.
atonement. You can't get around that actually, and you can go to some heavy lifters, and if you put that book in front of them, even if they don't like him, they're going to struggle to. They won't struggle to give you a reason, but they're going to struggle to dismiss it. And
Yep.
so, yeah,
Absolutely.
I think
No,
Big Boy's great. He's hard to talk to. Have you ever sat down and talked with him?
I've not. No, not yet. I was hoping to if I got out there, but I didn't get to. So no, I haven't.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
could see that. I could.
Yeah. I'm
No.
like, dude, you make me want to smoke cigarettes so bad. Like, it's making me like a nervous wreck sitting here talking with you. But he's a bit squirrely, neurotic, I
Yeah.
guess the word, but super cool dude. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I've got a friend who drove from Michigan to go camp at his front yard to try to talk to him one time, and
Ah,
I don't think that worked. Pretty sure that he got asked to leave because that's understandable at that point. If someone camped on my front yard, I'd be like, "Hey, I want to talk with you, but I'm also a little concerned how you got here. But that's cool. It's cool. We'll talk."
yeah,
But yeah, I can imagine. So no, I think there are quite a few that I remember like getting my first, especially moving into like our denomination, into the Mennonite Brethren world. I didn't have a whole lot of context. My context for moving into here was I had met Bruxy KV prior to that whole situation coming down through a podcast that I was working on at the time as an editor. And I had asked him, I said, "Hey, I agree with the Mennonites on these particularities. I've got some hesitation on these points. Do you know of anyone who would kind of be similar in the US?" And he had said, "Hey, check out the Mennonite Brethren." I did, and I ended up in Utah about a year later, and had a great time out there. But it was funny because I came in and I was like, "Hey, I've read these books, these ones," and a lot of people were like, "What on earth are you reading?" And I was like, "Hey guys, this is like like a lot of it
yeah,
stuff that we resonate with in some sense." So it was cool. I don't know, it was a good thing ultimately, but it was
yeah.
definitely
And
a
I
surprising
haven't
one.
I haven't found a ton of like. I don't mean this as a negative. I haven't
No,
found a
no.
ton of like spiritual thoughtfulness in
Yep.
regards to like reading and reframing how we think about things and say things
Yep.
within the MB community. I
Yep.
have a little bit at the seminary level, some of the professors there for
Oh
sure.
yeah.
Um, but I'm mourning this for the MB. I desire for us to be better at producing communicators that
Absolutely.
are, in that that aren't just pseudo Acts 29 whatever.
Yep. Yep.
You know, and so I'm glad you're around, dude. It's refreshing. It's been a weird ride, man.
I can
Being
imagine so. Yeah.
yeah.
I think my biggest
And
shock. Oh yeah, sorry.
I was just gonna say, like we planted just over 12 years ago when I was starting with them, and they were really struggling if they were going to go with us, or
Sure.
and to their credit and to their beauty of the MB leadership at that time, like they were like, no, this man loves Jesus and his family loves Jesus, and they deeply love the confession, for the most part,
Yep. Yep.
and um, yeah, and they got behind us, but not without real hesitation and concern, and not because of the tattoos or whatever
Yep.
that thing
Yep.
like that's like you know it's like that's just like a qualification to be like non-denominational. It's like
Yep.
tattoos,
Yep. Yep. It's the
and
truth nowadays.
it was, but it was, yeah, it was our open communion practices and some of my hermeneutic stuff. But I was like, hey, my grid's just a little different, guys. Like, but I can affirm and submit. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the most shocking for me was having gone out to Pacific District first. There were plenty of people with tattoos. That was just kind of like I don't know. A lot of the PDC vibe was more non-denominational. I mean, South Mountain, where I worked at,
Yeah.
most people have no idea it's Mennonite Brethren. So there's that element of things. So when I came out here and I interviewed and they were like, whoa, you got a lot of tattoos. I was like, yeah, you guys don't. Like, I'm surprised because I thought that's what we did. Like, this is my only experience, man. Like,
Yeah.
it was a wild one, but it worked out. They haven't kicked me out yet, so I'm happy to be part of it. That's for sure.
Yeah.
It's pretty great. But yeah, back to some of the book stuff. I think one of the things I was going to ask, is there a book that gave you language for something that you didn't have? But I think you kind of answered that one with Willard and some of that stuff. So what? Moving on, I would say if you could put, and this is always probably the most challenging, and I put it that way on purpose because I could ask if you could hand a book to every single person and everybody could say the Bible and we'd be great. But I want to know if you could put a book in the hands of every Christian, what would that book be? What's something you think that Christians ought to read? It might still be the Bible, but
No, I wouldn't put the Bible in most Christians' hands. They haven't done it. Not without community.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen.
So I would say, and this will connect back to an earlier book, but talk about the first guy to rewrite a Dallas Willard book was not John Mark Comer. It was a guy named Don Simpson.
Yeah.
And he wrote a book called Revolution of Character, which was the entry point or, elementary version of Renovation of the Heart. And that book is so simple, so beautifully written. It's not that long. It is the book that I have the most copies of here at Axiom that we give to every new follower of Jesus. And anybody wanting to go into leadership. I said, you just have to read this book. And we're going to meet as you do it. And so that's the book I think that I generally tend to want to put into most people's hands, because once you read that, you can at least have a little bit of not just a lexicon, but a worldview for navigating spirituality, which is what most of us are trying to get to. We just don't have the words for it. And we don't have churches that have an ecclesiology robust enough for it. We just have some light programming, or a good aesthetic. And so I think that's the book that I would probably want to. If somebody was want to go from like, okay, now I know Jesus, but now I want to go live it out, I would put Brave Cities in their hand. That would be the book I would put. And that book is a summation of, my ecclesiology, my philosophy of ministry, the heart of what I long for in the cultural moment. It really gets to that. Are there things in that book that like cause me pause? Yeah. I wouldn't throw out, and they know this. We're friends. I wouldn't ever throw out the ritual of Sunday.
Yep.
And I actually think we need the ritual. And there's rituals we need to restore. Like there's things that we let go of in the church. You might have at your church, I don't know because I haven't been there. Do you guys have a cemetery on the lot?
We do not. I wish we did, but we don't. No.
If I do one more thing as a pastor, it's going to be to build a cemetery. And that is something we need to restore. I used to walk by the dead, right? Like every Sunday. And that teaches us something. And it teaches us to be quiet. It teaches us the legacy. It teaches us to not be afraid of death. Like we need the I don't know. Maybe you and I could write a book about this. But we need that again.
I'm down. I agree.
Have you read A Time to Die? That's the name of the book.
I have not. Somebody just recommended it to me the other day, so I got to order a copy, but I haven't yet. No.
Yeah.
No, I want to check it out.
Read it. Yeah. Yeah, read it, man. Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. The other thing I've often thought about is like, especially in the Anabaptist circles, it used to be a pretty big piece of things, but I can't tell you that I have ever walked into a church service or actually anything other than a youth group once that I recall where there was foot washing. I was like, man, foot washing is such an awkward and uncomfortable ritual for sure. But I love that about it, man. Like, I think it'd be so awesome to have like the foot washing corner on a Sunday morning. I don't know. Have you guys gotten involved in that at all, or no? Or what's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, man, I've done it. I've done it here at Axiom
Yeah.
occasionally. I'll give you one of your neighboring churches over there in Heston, Heston MB, Brad
Yep.
Burkholder. Yeah,
Yep.
he
Yep.
was out here hanging with me for a week, and I washed his feet at the end of it in front of the church, and I've
That
never
is so
heard
cool.
more girly giggles in my entire life. They were his feet were so ticklish. I was
Yep.
like,
Yep.
"Bro, you're ruining this right now, man. Like, you gotta stop laughing and like wiggling your toes, dude. It's creeping me out. Like, this was supposed to
Yep.
be a
Yep.
gesture of love, you know." Uh, he's never come back since and pulled all
Yeah, that might be
funding
it.
from Ford Axiom after that.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, we do a contemplative arts service twice a year that has stations and live instrumentation and foot washing, but
Yeah.
it's free flow. It's not like we're all in a space and we're engaging as we're ready each thing. It's not like, okay,
Yep.
now go do this. So we do have done foot washing, and actually, hey, theologically, I would make the argument, and I think I would be in safe territory to say that it really should have been an ordinance, um,
Yep. Yep.
because the way Jesus talks about foot washing was that you must go do this,
Yep.
and it was he uses similar language there as he uses with communion
Yep.
and baptism. And so it's like, why did we leave foot washing? The Mennonites were the closest to really embody
Yep.
that. But now we're like, I hear guys say that they're embodying it through like sort of like other ways. I'm like, no, you gotta get your feet out of your shoe, man. You know,
Yep. Yep.
there's no
Absolutely.
metaphorical foot washing going on here. On like, don't get me wrong. There's probably a good sermon in that, but like,
Sure.
but
Sure.
Jesus
But
got on
not
the
the
ground
thing.
and walked some feet.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and I think
No.
the second we restore that in every church, mark my words, the second we restore that in every church, we will eradicate uh, bad leadership. We
Yep.
will, like, leadership that goes south, that's hooking up with the secretaries, that's corrupted. Like, all those leaders are gone.
Absolutely.
Because we will restore a humility and a submissive power um, that won't. It just you can't have your feet washed and be cheating on your wife at the same time, you know?
Yep.
And so
Absolutely.
I think we need it. You and I at our
Yep.
churches every single week. No, I'm
I'm
kidding.
down. I'm down. No, we talked a little bit ago in church in one of our leadership meetings, and I was saying, as I was looking into the history of where the greeting minute comes from, that so many churches, I mean, you go to especially like mega churches, you've got the 3 minutes to say hi to your neighbor type situation, which is fine. It's usually just in my experience in churches, it's usually just been more of a transition piece where they're like, hey, we got to get somebody on stage and we want it to look clean, so we'll give everybody 2 minutes to be distracted. And that's kind of become the cultural piece. And I was like, guys, if you look into, especially in Anabaptist history, looking at these traditions where people wouldn't move on from this piece until they were done rectifying anything that had been, anyone who had been hurt or anybody who had something against their brother or sister, like the service could be 4 hours long and nobody cared, because that was the time where you were supposed to make good with the people around you. And I was like, man, it would be the most uncomfortable, maybe even worse than foot washing on a Sunday morning. It would make people uncomfortable if I said, hey, you got a problem with your brother or sister? You've got this amount of time or longer. You just keep going until you've figured that out. Because in community together, we're called to be in unity. We don't have to agree on everything, but we do have to be loving our neighbor as ourselves. And so, man, I threw that out there, and I'm not sure if that'll
I
ever
love
happen,
that.
but we were trying. I think like some of the ordinances of the church we were talking about, and for me, like, it's incredible that some of that stuff got lost, because I get it. It's probably more, I'm not going to blame solely the seeker sensitive movement because it happened before that, but it's more accessible to people to not have to take your shoes off and get uncomfortable on a Sunday morning. Sure. But like, what is community if not uncomfortable at times? There's something that we've lost in the midst of that, that I think there's some benefit to trying to regain that at some point. And so I think it's a huge one. The last book question that I had for you, and I've got a couple that I'll ask that I didn't send over, but just kind of interested in. The last book question I've got for you is a real simple one. Is there anything that you're reading currently that you're excited about?
Everything I'm reading right now is like stuff written by friends. In fact, I've got your book on my next on the
Oh,
shelf.
nice, nice.
So I'm excited about all of those because those are voices I can trust and people I know. Disarming Leviathan is a
Yeah,
close friend of mine, and just finished that one. Another one by a guy named Vermone, who is a pastor here. Did a book with Moody that on community
yeah,
and loving relationship that I just wrapped up, but I thought he did a really good job. And so, um, yeah, I've got, and then, again, I was with him yesterday, but this book, like I only got 4 chapters in, Reckoning with Power by David Fitch. And I'm like, dang, he's got some stuff in here, like theologically that I feel like it's gonna change me a little bit. And
yeah.
so I'm excited about that because it's not like I could just read it. I can hit him up now and kind of ask some questions. But he works through this paradigm of helping us rethink our sort of creation narrative. Um, and I'm going to butcher this now, but most pastors and theologians point back to the garden as sort of the picture perfect. David Fitch he says, well, maybe new creation, not former, but the latter is more perfect.
Mm,
And and he begins to tease out this idea that what Jesus is doing is not just restoring us back to the garden, it's renewing the garden. And so the garden it's not just coming back. It's not a restoration project. It's a
yeah,
renovation project. And and so there's a little bit of that going on in there that gets into sort of dominion theology and like how people are about, well, God said we're going to govern this and do this, and but Jesus comes and says, not so among you, you will not lord over other people. And so again, Fitch picks that idea up and he says, like, Jesus is trying to reteach us what power looks like, in light of his now being there, in light of the fact that now all authority on heaven and earth has been given to us. So that book's been exciting. It's been fun to read. And there's some stuff in there that's challenging me.
yeah, yeah. That's cool, man. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I think a lot of that is helpful stuff. And there's been a lot of books recently that, and again, like you said, there's that element of I often don't, although I've been trying to build up a couple people to kind of read in community with. But since being here, finding new community, all of that, it's been a little more challenging. But the one that lately I've been digging into, I don't know if you've had a chance to see it yet, but the Josh Porter's new book, like I had on last week, How to Die. One of the most insane to just kind of like, I don't know, there's no I asked him on the show, I was like, how do you even pitch this to a publisher? Because it doesn't follow any logical metric of like, oh, it's a fiction book, it's a nonfiction, it's a little bit of all of them.
Yeah.
And so I've been really enjoying digging into that and trying to get to the bottom of that one. I think it's been really helpful.
I ordered it the second I saw he was on or you guys were chatting together or whatever. You did something with him or with the book, and I thought I should probably pick that up. So, and he's
Yeah.
always done stuff that's a little bit like he always wants to play with the medium, and I like that about him, and
Yes. Yep.
I celebrate that. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna read that one. So, and Showbread's awesome.
Nice. No,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't get to share with him, but I saw them play when he was in Showbread in a little church in Mount Airy, Maryland. And I think, if I recall, and I genuinely could be wrong, but I'm fairly confident that that was the one where they got shut down because the elders of the church had no idea who the youth pastor was bringing in. And then about 5 minutes into the show, Josh has like ripped his shirt off and spitting fake blood places, and people were freaking out. And I was like, man, it was awesome. It really was. But if I remember, I was probably like 13, but I don't think the show ended. I'm fairly confident. I don't think they got to finish the show out. It was a fun one though. But yeah, he's a fun guy to talk to, and I appreciate his ministry he's working on too. He's doing some fun stuff out there.
Yeah, I haven't stayed connected with him, but my band did play with theirs a few times back in the day, and
Yeah.
that whole scene was the same scene we were rolling in. So
Yes. Yeah. No. So, with that being said, one of the things that I wanted to jump into was just kind of, and it's kind of a big conversation, but I know, like you said at the beginning, you're doing a bunch of things and you're kind of able to still find peace and quiet and all of that in the midst of that. One of the questions I had was just how not necessarily how has that happened as much as it is like, how do you see that? I know it's something you're passionate about. How do you see that in pastoral ministry? Like, I think we talked at the conference in Omaha a while back about just kind of like the future of the church and pastors getting involved in the community. Like, I know it's something that you're very passionate about. So how have you seen that work out in your community? You guys are doing a lot of cool stuff in Peoria. So how's that worked?
yeah, it's worked pretty well. Do you just to flip it around, like at your church, do you guys have small groups? How many do you guys have? Just out of curiosity, is it like 5 or 10 or
Small groups?
yeah, like
We've got like 3 at the moment. Kerner has had a scarred past of small groups, and we're trying to get them up and running, hopefully. But we've got like 3, and we need like 20.
so how many groups do you have? Whether it's committees or small groups or kids classes or you know, like any church has multiple spaces all at once
Yeah.
do different things. And in a kingdom ecosystem model, which is what I'm being a practitioner of, I'm saying that all the many things that are happening in and through a church are not just what's taking place here on Sunday, it's all of it. And so if I begin to look at it like that, and I think about the neighborhood I'm in as the place that I'm supposed to be sort of a light on a hill, a radiant presence, then I have to begin to treat all those spaces the same way I treat the spaces that I'm, quote, in responsibility for at Axiom. So the person leading our coffee shop is like a small group leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
The monastery, which is our art gallery studio, we commissioned all of those artists as priests. Like, you guys are priests in the hood, and the gospel will be worked out through your artwork, because beauty will is a transcendent, right? It's one of the 3 transcendentals. And so we commission them. We build that, but we can't just say go be an artist everywhere. No, here's the studio. Plant yourself, grow community. It's you walk out Axiom, you go down the street, and there it is, right?
Yep.
Uh,
Yep.
Next to that is a mural garden, right? A contemplative garden of murals, and
That's awesome.
we get to bless artists that aren't part of our community to come in, and we pay them to do art. And now all of a sudden the artist feels loved by the church. Like, why is the church paying me to do art? I'm not even Christian. It's like, well, yeah, but you work in the lane of God because you're stewarding beauty, and beauty belongs to
Yep.
God. So do this as beautifully as you know how, and we'll see Jesus in it. And that's sort of how, so I'm just giving you tastes of some of the things.
Yeah.
So I want to rip out every boundary line that the church has in regards to its missional imagination. So if the
Mm.
structure of Sunday morning is keeping you from being in your neighbor's house at their dinner table or whatever it is, then we have to rethink it. And
Yeah.
so the structure of your church should accentuate that. So what we realized we had to do is we had to dumb down the Sunday experience, not in a like elementary way, but like I needed to
Yep.
take away like it doesn't say church on our building.
Yep.
It's architecturally really simple so that it just sort of celebrates people, not architecture. And it needed to be extremely approachable. It's like if you walk into a library, you kind of slowly open the door, peek in. Half the churches, when you walk in the sanctuary, you're like, oh,
Yep.
are they in service right now? Like, how do we get
Yep.
rid of all of that? So that this can be a place that people are gathering, and then on the other side of it, it's like, I want to see, secular spaces become sanctuaries to
Yep.
Jesus. And
Absolutely.
but that takes, for me, it takes a lot of prayer, a lot of walking, a lot of ministry of presence, um, and it takes an apostolic entrepreneur, as well. So I don't know if I'm answering the question. I'm just kind of like thinking up this or spitting out what's coming up as you brought that up. But
No, no, that's perfect. Yeah. Well, one of the things that's always stuck out to me, like since I met you, is talking about I think I came across the Instagram page before we had met. Um for your church. But one of the things that stood out to me was like, hey, you look at, I've got friends over in the UK, and like churches with breweries is a pretty normal thing over there. Like having this other space where people can commune and have conversation. It's also kind of like a less a less churchy place to
yeah,
meet. Like, hey, let's come hang out over here. And so I'm always interested because you guys have so much going on that I think is such a good, valuable thing for a church to have, that so many other people who work in churches are looking at and they're like, oh man, like my elder board would never let us do this, that, or the other thing, but I have all these grand ideas. And I think I appreciate that Axiom has, it feels, even from an outsider's perspective, like the like imagination is very valued. And like, hey, what's the thing that we can do that really does uplift people while also pointing everyone directly towards the creator? And I just appreciate that. Again,
well,
I'm on the outside looking in, but it's cool to see that. So I wanted you to share a bit, and I think
man,
you did great.
I challenge you to turn your sanctuary into the local pub, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really am so convicted that the if we're going to be springs of living water, if we're going to be life in the wasteland, like we have to live this out, between the pulpit and the pub, and that has to be embodied.
Amen.
And
Yeah.
you go to a bar and it's like one of the last sacred places in that's why it's called a public house,
Yep.
or a pub. And it makes the most sense that the church would be a present there, but in a different way.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
would be amongst debauchery, and drunkenness, but we wouldn't be those things. We
Yep.
might,
Yep.
but we can model what it looks like to participate with, So you get all this, but yeah, I just had to be a practitioner, man. So for me, that's really what it came down to. I was like, I'm gonna do church. We're gonna do Sunday. We're gonna do all that because I love helping followers of Jesus and new people become disciples. But I'm
Yeah.
never gonna be that churchy because I gotta keep I want to be in good standing with non-believers and live it out, and that takes creativity and pioneering and failing and costs a lot of money, you know, um,
Yeah.
doing all these different things. And it's not like I make a bunch of money. People think I'm really wealthy because I own a bunch of businesses. I'm like, oh, these are just tables that we've set, and Jesus said, "Go out and fill the house, man. Like, go tell everybody you
Yep.
know." And but yeah, it's become a network of missionaries essentially, and
Oh, that's awesome.
each space that we're in, we're training up and equipping people. We have a pedagogy for this. We have a cohort that we do for this. We've developed, a new kind of pastor, future church, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So
No, that's awesome, man. No, I'm always encouraged to see what you guys are doing, and it helps inspire us as we're in a season we're just trying to figure out how to break people out of the mold, and I think we've gotten a good long ways over this past year, but how to break people out of the mold of what's expected in church and trying to push towards where's God calling you? Like, what is the thing that you have a unique ability that you can be part of this story without having to be strictly here on a Sunday morning? Like, what else can you do? And I'm inspired by what you guys do, so I appreciate it, man. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on here and being a guest. I know I didn't know that you get podcast requests all the time. I figured, but I didn't know that you don't usually do them. So I'm honored. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on, dude.
Yeah.
And it's always nice talking to you. So yeah, is there anywhere you want to direct people to check
Yeah.
out your stuff?
I'll direct people not to me, but to somebody else that I think, and I mentioned them earlier, but Brave Cities, the book Brave Cities by Hugh Halter, Taylor McCall.
Yes.
That is the ticket, man. And y'all should read it. You'll read about Axiom's journey in that book, by the way. But that book, I think, is most helpful. And Hugh Halter, I mean, he wrote Tangible Kingdom. He wrote tons of books that were, um, light bulb moments for all of us, that were.
Oh yeah.
So that's where I'll point people to. Otherwise, Project Banquet, you can get a taste there.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it, dude. And we'll have to continue following up. One day I got to get out there and check out what you guys are doing in person, but I appreciate having you on. And I think people enjoy getting to hear a little bit more about y'all's story and some of the books that have shaped you. So thanks for being on here, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to connect. Yeah.